Meep. Okay. Some of you in my neck of the woods may have noticed many of the adverts on my monetized videos are for the BBC. You're awesome, BBC. I love how you can make money from YouTube commercials yet still charge people to own a television. You continue to rob the British public of their tax money for the sake of not having commercials. And then you pull this shit. That's some big balls right there. I always knew it stood for big bald cunts, but I didn't know it was spelled like that. But ho-hum, business is business. I have no say in these things. But I wonder how receptive y'all might be if I keep that sucker rolling a bit longer.
And Philip Davis joins me now from Leeds. Welcome to the Sunday Politics.
Now, there are other parties involved in this particular small political drama, but I'm going to refrain as much as I can from responding to the party or parties in question, because the party or parties in question is an antagonistic cunt. And so are you, Andrew Neil. But I feel reasonably safe that I'm not going to get arrested for responding to you. Do you know why that is, Andrew? Do you know what the crucial difference is here between you and the as yet unnamed antagonist? The power that you do not have but the antagonist in question does. The difference between freedom and imprisonment. The difference between open debate and government kidnapping. If you do know this difference, and I shouldn't need to explain everything I'm about to explain, but for the sake of argument, I'll play it that you don't. Commence your proposal, sir.
The Parliament is still dominated by men. Business is still dominated by men. Most power centres are still dominated by men.
Most schools are dominated by women. Most medical facilities are dominated by women. Most homes are dominated by women. I mean, most power centres are dominated by women. Ledoy, Andrew, did you mean the electric plants when you said power centres? Or did you mean to assert, without reason, that Parliament and business are where all of the power happens, and schools and homes are not where any of the power happens? I would say they're very different kinds of power, just like what goes on in the egg is very different from what goes on in the chicken. But certainly neither is to be ignored. And I'll tell you how they're different. Politicians have power, but to a large degree they are duty-bound to use that power to serve the public and answer to their vote. Businessmen have power, but to a large degree they are duty-bound to use that power to serve their clients and answer to their custom. Fathers are legally bound to serve their children and answer to their mothers, whereas mothers are not bound, legally or by duty, to serve or answer to anyone, to any degree, ever, unless they feel like it. Now then, establishment outlanders of the internet, if the only argument your black hole conscience can think of right now is misogynist, then you have already declared yourself unfit for debate. When I'm trying to discuss the legal system and all you can think of is a name to call me, or some inevitable ad hominem bullshit about my mother, or some ex-lover and some children you invented for the sake of this ad hominem, that is your cue to fuck off. You may sit at the small table with the under-fives and the Nazis while I have an adult discussion with whoever's left over. Alrighty. I want you to look at two figures for me. Whatever country you might be in, look at these two figures. The percentage of government officials who are male and the percentage of custodial parents who are female. let's say for the sake of argument, the answer is 70% in both cases. In such a case, it's elementary that the reason there's a dearth of women in government is because women don't want to be government officials, and the reason there's a dearth of men in parenting is because the government is keeping men out of parenting. Oh wait, Andrew, I got it wrong, didn't I? I got it all back to front and shit. No, it's women don't go into government because the government is keeping them out of the government, and it's men don't ever see their children because they just don't want to. Are we going to start from the middle, Andrew? Or are we going to start from where you are? And stay where you are, dogmatically and beyond all reason, for the entire conversation and beyond. Personally, I would prefer it if we start in the middle, because that would at least be some attempt to achieve equality, Andrew.
You don't need a separate day or a separate debate.
Neither do you. Who's you, Andrew? Because apparently it's not men. You're wearing a poppy. You are wearing a fucking poppy. It is the 11th of November. In 5 days. You are wearing a fucking poppy. And you are referring to men as you.
You don't need a separate day or a separate debate.
Thank you, Andrew. That's the kind of clip that can make it into the history books. It's a perfectly concise snapshot depicting the end of virtue. Like that photo of the Vietnamese kids. I'm serious. Andrew, look at yourself. Look at the poppy you're wearing and listen to what you're saying to the men of this nation.
You don't need a separate day or a separate debate.
The feed's now going to change to the other guy, Andrew, and that guy has already won this debate. Whoever he is, I am glad to see him instead of you. That guy could be the fucking Kaiser himself, depicted decapitating kittens as we cut to him, and he would still already only be the second most ethically torpid stain on this conversation. As it happens, he's just a Tory. You make Tories look good. Congratulations.
Well, there's a difference between how many men there are in Parliament and the debate about men's issues. And I think there's some very serious issues, such as the high suicide rate amongst men, the underachievement of boys in school, as I mentioned there, the low life expectancy of men.
Are you sure you're ready for the implications here, Mr. Davis? Because what you're doing at this exact moment is an activity that sounds suspiciously like men's rights activism. Do you know what that means? A lot of you politicians are rather fuddy-duddy-ish, and yet you brave the world of social media. And I can picture someone on Twitter asking you, Philip Davis, are you a men's rights activist? And not knowing what's going on, you'll say, yes, of course I'm a men's rights activist. It's part of my job. And your career will be over, Mr. Davis. If you say those words, you're done. I know they sound like words that might be important to the governing of humankind, but while you were looking away just now, the ideologues we left in charge of our schools decided that men's rights is not a category of human rights, it is an internet hate group. I know, it's trippy as fuck, Phil. It really does feel like we only just looked away, right? But yeah, I call myself a men's rights activist for that reason. There's nothing wrong with advocating for the rights of men. But no, yeah, millions of people disagree now. They think women's rights are human rights and men's rights is a hate group. They think women are human and men are a cybernetic spirit of hatred. So, like I say, the move you're making might be a great deal bolder than you think, Mr. Davis, and I hope you know what you're doing.
The underreporting of health issues like testicular cancer, the underreporting of male victims of domestic violence.
You could bring that up at any time. There's enough men in the Commons, if these issues are important, and clearly they are, there's enough men in the Commons to bring that up whenever you want.
He just did. Andrew, that's what you are at this very moment presenting a news story about what happened when he tried to do that. Timestamp 000.
Philip Davis, when he appeared in front of the Backbench Commons Business Committee earlier this week. His suggestion was met with disbelief.
Like, 2 fucking minutes after you said that, you said this.
There's enough men in the Commons to bring that up whenever you want.
Okay, can I bring it up now?
Disbelief.
All right, how about now?
Disbelief.
Now?
Disbelief. Bring that up whenever you want.
Now?
Disbelief. Bring that up whenever you...
Now!
Disbelief.
That little exchange I just created was like the 7th draft of this point. I went back to the drawing board so many times, just trying to sculpt away all the rage. Do you see why this clip is going to be used in future documentaries about how the world went full-on Orwell trip for a while there? You, the BBC, are stealing from the great British public, and you are spending the stolen revenue on news items like this, where you say, "Good evening, everyone. A thing has happened. We can confirm with video evidence that this thing has definitely happened. And now, we're going to tell someone that this thing did not happen, does not happen, and can never happen." Men's issues are being ignored, actively, deliberately ignored. That's what this news story is about. And people like me have been yelling at you for ages, saying, "Can you please stop pretending this isn't happening and at least put it on the fucking news or something?" But I never imagined this would be your response. This would be your olive branch. You're going to put it on the news, admit that it's happening, and then still pretend it's not happening. Even though you just proved it's happening, you are now pretending it's not. Do you see why it's not hyperbole to call this Orwellian? We swung right past the hyperbolic arc a long time ago. Now, to call it Orwellian is an understatement. Proof that men's issues are ignored. ... Men's issues are not ignored because I say so. You are broken and useless, Andrew Neil, and so is the BBC.
Well, actually there aren't. That's the whole point. There are very few opportunities to bring up these particular issues, and if you look through the record of Parliament, there is very few times when these issues have been debated.
Yeah. If we try to point out that no one gives a fuck about men, and your response is, "There are too many men," then sit the fuck back down at the small table, please. You are not part of the solution. You are very fucking obviously part of the problem. I'm going to swap human for object in the following analogy, because it still works. If my argument is we need to look after the chairs, and your response is, "No, we don't, there are too many chairs," then you have lost your fucking mind. And you are probably one of the reasons the chairs are all fucked. Because you will fish for whatever insane reason you can think of not to look after the chairs. Not you, Phil. I'm talking to the other party or parties.
And these aren't just issues that affect men, by the way. Lots of women are concerned about these issues. Lots of women are married to men. They have fathers. They have sons. They're things that things should be important to everybody. And I think that these are serious issues, and they're not to be scoffed at.
Excellent points, Mr. Davis. They're not just our families, they are our fellow human beings. All perfectly cogent, concise and well-presented arguments, Mr. Davis. Now then, Mr. Neil, are you going to let those compassionate, humanitarian observations sit with your viewing public, so that they might warm at their own pace to this element of what we call equality? Are you at least, Mr. Neil, going to acknowledge that Mr. Davis has made some important points that are worth considering?
Are you surprised at the appalling abuse that that clip provoked? I'm not saying you had anything to do with it, of course, but are you surprised at the appalling abuse that Jess Phillips then found herself on the end of?
Look, I know it's one of history's little apocryphal tales, but again, it works. So, picture the scene. Once upon a time, it was someone's job to say, "Sire, I remind you once more, the people have no bread, and no cake either." And it was someone else's job to look that person dead in the face and say, "Well, that's as maybe, but the real issue is all the mean things the peasants are saying about Marie Antoinette."
Yeah, it was completely and utterly outrageous, and I very much hope that Jess is reporting some of these people to the police.
Yeah, it worked like a charm back then, and it still works like a charm today. Fuck you, Phil.
We have a democracy, we have a debate.
Do we? Phil, do we have a democracy and a debate? Or do we have a system in which one side of the argument is a crime? You presented a proposal. A woman disagreed with your proposal, and now you're saying anyone who disagrees with her should be thrown in prison.
Have a debate, have a debate, have a debate, have a debate.
No, we don't! You proposed the motion that we have a debate, and someone else presented the counter-proposal that this debate should not be allowed. You tried to exercise your free speech. She, in turn, exercised her censorship of your free speech. And the BBC appears to be on her side. And then some peasants on the internet said, "We agree with Mr. Davis. We think there should be a debate, and those people should be reported to the police." What in Satan's fucking U-bend are you playing at, Phil?
We have a democracy, we have a debate. Jessie's perfectly entitled to her opinion that we shouldn't have a democracy, we shouldn't have a debate.
This is why I sometimes kick my feet back and argue with an adolescent on the internet. Because I can forgive an adolescent on the internet for their shortcomings. It's to be expected, so, you know, we can have fun with it. But the exact same empty-headed fucking doublethink comes out of the people we trust with our human rights! And that, I find it hard to be playful with this shit. Not impossible, just very hard.
I don't agree with her, but she's perfectly entitled to that point of view.
Yeah, it should be an entitlement. No one should be criminalised for their opinion. Oh, except men on the internet.
That's what happens in a democracy.
Maybe you need a debate about men not behaving in that way over something that they don't agree with.
Yes, Her Royal Highness, Princess Jess, has every right to shut down any debate about how to feed the peasants. The real problem in our society is why on earth are these peasants so rude? And how much are all these prisons going to cost? Will it be cheaper just to gas us all?
Well, I very much agree. We should have debates about what we should do with these morons that contact people in the way that they contacted Jess. It's completely unacceptable. I hope she goes to the police. But
what did they say to her? What did they... You've neither of you given us any examples of the things people said to her, or any of the things people said to Philip Davis. It would be interesting to see them side by side. We've already got 2 examples of the nasty bullshit that Philip Davis has to endure, namely Jess Phillips and now Andrew Neil. But you have not given us a single example of the nasty shit that Jess Phillips has to endure. Give us something. Give us the worst one. Of the 30 million males in this country whose issues were remorselessly laughed at, what was the worst thing said by the worst one of them? And was it as bad as something like, Your issues as a human are laughable, and we're not going to talk about them until we've got rid of enough of you. I mean, never mind the women involved in the trolling. Never mind the women who went online to call her ladyship all manner of names. They don't exist. Or are somehow innocent, depending on whatever you're fucking going with today. Because men are the ones who should be criminally penalised for disagreeing with a member of parliament electronically from 100 miles away. That's the debate we need to have. How do we go about arresting men who would like men's issues talked about? I mean, this laughable debate about do men have any problems, do men have any issues that we alone can sort out? Heavens no! Crumple it up! I've never heard anything so absurd. I mean, men do most of the extremely stressful and difficult jobs because we tell them to and force them to and vote them to. Why on earth should we worry about their issues? I mean, every political conference you ever go to, it's just men's rights this, men's rights that. Can we give it a rest for a change?
That shouldn't take away from the importance of the issues that I want to debate to coincide with International Men's Day, in the same way that we have a debate every year to coincide with International Women's Day.
All right, you finally pulled it back, Phil. You got there in the end. And I am calling this the end. The rest of that interview was yet more utterly irrelevant bullshit that Andrew Neil threw at Philip Davis in an inhumanely callous attempt to erase the audience's memory of the perfectly salient and pressing issues Mr. Davis tried to raise in this interview. This is all I see on the BBC, and it's all I see happening on the BBC in the near future. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. One of the many thorns in the iceberg. To repeat, if any British citizen wishes to keep any device on their property that can receive television waves, they are legally forced to pay £145 a year and rising to the government and to the BBC.
Disbelief.
And their justification for this is that, unlike most other countries, we in Great Britain get the benefit of fair and impartial news reporting and no commercials. As I said, the BBC does have commercials all the fucking time, but only commercials for itself. They don't allow other people to advertise on them, but they can advertise wherever the fuck they like, even YouTube. They even make deliberately scary public service announcements for TVs, saying, if you haven't paid your licence fee, you will be caught and charged with thousands of pounds. They fucking rotate the thing every year, so there's a new, ever more scary one than the last. And most of us grow up with this shit. We watch it and just go, lol, ho-hum, that seems normal. There's a box in my house that forcibly extracts money from me and tells me so. And this shit is their idea of objective, impartial reporting. This is Sunday daytime programming. People of all ages watch it, and it's the most irresponsible, backward authoritarian bullshit I've ever seen. You people do not fucking care. Like, as long as we have a one-way system of agency and victimhood and the genders are in the right order, fuck it. All ethics can go to shit. All logic can go to shit. The only acceptable answer is man bad, woman weak. Debate over. Disagree and you go to prison. Even if you're 100 miles away and you've never left your basement, you should go to prison for reacting emotionally to someone who laughed at your human rights. Someone who is employed in service of the public is laughing at the human rights of half the population. And all you can say is, if anyone has a problem with this, they should go to prison. I grew up lionising the BBC. Because it's like an old friend. It was always there for me, through darkness and light, through come hell or high water. And I always thought, when do you sleep, BBC? When do you even sleep? Well, guess what I'm thinking now? How do you sleep? Seriously, how? Because I have to drink. Feel free to mirror this video, folks. Please do. Let them know they can't DMCA this out of existence. You are going to hear this, BBC, and you are going to take heed. You are finally going to listen to the great British public when they tell you you are frauds and thieves and you are no longer welcome in this world. Once upon a time you made unique quality programming because you were the only game in town. But now there are thousands of games in town and you have become nothing but a corporate governmental extortion machine that peddles shameless Orwellian hate propaganda. I'm asking you nicely, either sack Andrew Neil and every other bigoted twat who takes a king's ransom for spewing their gibberish on your network, or kindly stick your entire tail up your entire arse and fuck off out of existence forever. As you can see, I work for another government corporation, the Royal Mail. So here's an idea, BBC. Why don't you get together with Royal Mail, figure out who I am, do your little propaganda pushing, call me a rapist, call me a misogynist, call me a partisan of fucking pear tree, and get me fired. Then I can devote my time to bringing down the BBC. Alrighty? Your choices are this rock or this hard place. Either is just fine with me. Game on. Goodbye. Fuck you in the back of the head forever, you evil cunts. Mike out.